White History Month, which apparently makes me some... Oh, hi! Welcome to The Jib. This bi-weekly podcast is about the many and varied schemes of the many and varied U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies, organizations, and committees, and how they are stupid and funny. Join us on our merry journey through space and time. Hi, my name is Barry. You might know me as Cricket, the puppy killed in cold blood by South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
Fuck that. Anyways, yeah. So, hey, hi, everybody. I'm Seamus. You may know me from the after-school ABC special, Adventures in Gaslighting.
I don't remember seeing that. Was that a real one?
No, you didn't see that one?
That actually happened. That's a real episode.
No.
You're supposed to keep going and say, yes, it is, until I accept something that's not true, until I question my sanity.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to let you off the hook easy as well.
There's a few things we have to address at the top. First of all, my T-shirt, I thought I was being very clever, right? My T-shirt says straight out of context, which I think is funny. But when I'm sitting in the chair, all you can see is straight, and it looks like I'm doing some sort of homophobic thing, but I'm not. It is straight out of context.
So I think you're being concerned because you always have to say that it's a bi-weekly podcast. So
it is a weekly bi podcast. I should say it like that, shouldn't I?
Weekly bi podcast, yeah. So I think you were just being a little concerned, you know. So.
And secondly, we should probably address what happened 2 weeks ago.
What happened 2 weeks ago?
We made an episode about William Maher, if you remember. And it got the biggest number of views we've had on any of our podcasts. It got 1,200 views, which is a lot for us. Usually you get like 100 views per episode-ish, right? And it got 1,200 views. So we had a brief conversation about whether we should do every single podcast after this should be criticizing Bill Maher, because it seems to be what the people want. But then we decided instead, well, you know, I was looking at the one before that, Viola Liuzzo, remember? Mm-hmm. And that episode has something like 30 views, right? Which is insane to me. But then I'm thinking a lot more people are probably familiar with the name Bill Maher than Viola Liuzzo. Sure. And one of the things you and I wanted to do with this podcast is we wanted specifically to cover material that people were not familiar with, things that people wouldn't know. And if that occasionally means we have to take a hit on the views, well, I mean, that's what we wanted to do, right?
Yeah. And even if we discuss something like, you know, the Pinkertons, people know, everybody knows the Pinkertons, but some people don't know the whole story. So, you know, try to cover things and make it interesting. That's all.
Yes. And you would like to believe that people have heard of Iran.
Yeah.
But that's what I was thinking. Every so often we'll cover something, I guess, that's in the news and current and get a few views in there and also be funny.
So more Bill Maher is what we're saying.
Yeah, we're doing another Bill Maher. No, we're not. We're not here to talk about Bill Maher.
This week.
This is called Operation Sea Spray, which is a name I picked pretty much at random from the selection of names you will be cosseted with today. This is about the U.S. biological weapons program.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Now, when we started this podcast,
we knew about COVID.
You know what? No. When we started this podcast, we knew we'd end up talking about things apart from the FBI and the CIA, which is why I wrote the intro like that, in an intentionally vague and confusing manner, you know, all these committees and whatever, right? But today we're not talking about the FBI or the CIA, but some other US military shenanigans, which, despite a lot of digging, I've been unable to connect directly to the CIA or the FBI, and I did try. But it's still American military stuff, so we get to talk about it, right?
And they're all connected. I mean, let's be honest. How much does the military actually do without calling up the CIA or vice versa? You know, come on.
I imagine somebody's... Yeah, who's in charge of the whole thing? The president, I guess.
Well, technically, right.
Yeah. Can you imagine trying to do something serious and calling somebody like Donald Trump about it? Or maybe even Joe Biden.
Yeah. I mean, on paper, they're in charge, but who's really in charge?
Probably the Department of Defense guys, the Pentagon guys, right?
No.
Some people we've never heard of in the Pentagon.
Yeah, the Bilderbergs, don't you?
The Bilderberg group.
Yeah.
In Owl Creek or wherever they have their little meetings.
Owl Grove, right?
Owl Grove, yeah.
I think
Elk Grove. No, Elk Grove is a different place. Owl Grove, yeah.
Owl Grove, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Elk Grove is a place in San Francisco, I think.
All the Bohemians get together and party.
Bohemian Grove.
But that's it, Bohemian Grove.
Better. Okay, yeah.
You know what? That's going to be on my next song, Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. You take me down to Bohemian Grove and let me rule your world, baby. Anyway, here we go. This is about U.S. biological weapons program. And I tried to keep this kind of zippy, right? But there's also a bunch of stuff in the chemical weapons program that I did not get into. This is just about the biological weapons. What are biological weapons? You'll find out. In 1925, the Geneva Protocol prohibited the use of bacteriological methods of warfare. It was ratified by nearly all the global powers of the time, except the United States and Japan.
Foreshadowing.
In 1942, in the middle of a big war with the Nazis, the Americans set up a biological weapons program by the War Reserve Service under the oversight of the Army Chemical Warfare Service. One of the top advisors to President Franklin Roosevelt was George Merck. You may have heard of this man. Have you heard of Merck?
Yeah.
Whose company is still one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. There's a huge Merck Sharp in some foreign countries. Merck is known as Merck Sharp and Dome, and there's a huge Merck Sharp and Dome manufacturing plant about 10 miles away from my house, and I'm pointing to it because that's literally where it is. Not that any of you have any frame of reference, but that's where the factory is in relation to my house. And it employs so many people in my town, which is called Clonmel, that it's not a good idea to ask questions, right? So don't go digging too far into the Merck Sharp and Dome factory because a lot of people are employed there. A bit like, I remember seeing some senator talking about they found bombs out in the Middle East with Raytheon numbers on them or something. And the senator in charge of the state where the manufacturing plant was, they said to the senator, look, these bombs are being used to blow apart children in Iraq or whatever, And the senator said, look, yeah, he said, okay. But like, who's going to go to that town and tell them I'm going to have to shut down the entire town because you found a bomb in Iraq? Then I'm going to have to basically say all these people are now out of work, right? You want me to go down to that town and tell them that thousands of people are now out of work for no reason at all, other than it's the right thing to do. You can kind of see his point, but like, I mean, if you just think of it, like, I wouldn't want to.
No, because they don't care. The only time they care about labor is when it's involved in war.
Sure.
Right? Then they suddenly worry about the jobs. Then they suddenly care about the jobs. There's a great exchange. I can't stand either one of these people, okay? But Ron Paul was on CNN talking to Wolf Blitzer.
And you don't like Wolf Blitzer?
I don't like either one of them. They're both douchebags.
Okay.
And Ron Paul was actually, because he is sometimes sometimes. And he was talking about, we need to stop sending all this money to, all these different various weapons, Raytheons and such like that. And Wolf Blitzer, in a rare moment, just like breaks character and goes, but what about those jobs? What about all those jobs? It's like, dude, really? When the fuck do you ever say that? That's the only time they ever say that. They don't care.
I want to be that guy. You're all out of work now. This town is dead. Enjoy.
Yeah, well,
I saw Ron Paul
use
once.
The factory to build something else.
Okay. So, George Merck was advising Roosevelt. The program included a command center at Deseret Test Center in Utah, a production facility in Terre Haute. How do you pronounce that?
Terre
Haute?
Uh-huh.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Well, because I know Americans sometimes when they have foreign words like this, they don't pronounce it the foreign way. Okay, Terre Haute, Indiana, and a research and development facility at Camp Detrick, Maryland. This was renamed Fort Detrick in 1956 and is today known as the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, otherwise known as USAMRIID. And USAMRIID you might remember from any 80s movie about a disease outbreak, including the movie Outbreak. USAMRIID was all over that, like white on rice, right?
USAMRIID.
Brown on Rihanna. What?
USAMRIID.
USAMRIID, yeah. Have you heard that before?
Sounds like what was the redneck that was always chasing Bugs Bunny?
Ted Nugent.
Yosemite Sam.
Yosemite. Oh, it sounds like that. Yosemite Sam, right? Yeah, Yosemite Sam. Or Yosemite, as I used to call it for years. The Soviets, of course, were working on their own biological weapons program, as were the Japanese. The Japanese did it in a thing called Unit 731, which was particularly nasty and brutal. Do not Google Unit 731 if you value your dinner where it is. As you might
Sounds
have predicted,
like a great name for a band, though.
Unit 731, a punk band, yeah. We're doing it ironically, man. As you might have predicted, the US used many Unit 731 scientists for their own weapons program in a Japanese version of Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip is an episode we have, and you should watch it if you want to see it, that kind of thing. The US also went to great lengths to cover up Japanese war crimes. Tokyo Tribunal Judge Bert Röhling, after the trials, said, "It is a bitter experience for me to be informed now that centrally ordered Japanese war criminality of the most disgusting kind was kept secret from the court by the US government."
Shocking. Right?
Yeah, well, let's say Operation Paperclip did the same thing. People weren't told what these Nazis were up to.
You know what? I am so glad that America has, we've seen the light. We've decided we're going to hold everybody equally to justice, especially when it comes to war crimes. None of our allies, we will never run and try to protect them or keep them out of court or go against the ICC. We would never do that.
Indeed. Also, I'm glad I think Vietnam fixed all that. Because during Vietnam, things were so bad that students in all the universities had to set up little protest movements inside the universities to try and get people's attention. And I'm just glad that that's not necessary anymore, that we now understand what a war crime is. Yeah. We don't have to have it explained. So good, those days are gone, right? We're in a new year right now where that doesn't have to happen anymore.
Irish.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. There we go.
Careful now.
Sorry, you can cut that out if you want. Too political, is it? Sort of down on genocide is too political for you. Do you do the genocide Olympics? What's the worst genocide? Okay. During the Korean War in 1950, everyone was accusing everyone else of using these banned weapons. Banned in the 1925, remember? Remember that part of the episode where I said that? And the US denied everything. That's standard. And that's not a particularly American thing. The US denied everything. However, the US program expanded during the Korean War with a new production facility in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Various experiments on human subjects in residential areas were conducted in the 1950s with biological weapons. These experiments were collectively known as Project 112. And presumably Projects 1 through 111 were complete failures or didn't register for some reason. Now, ideally, the biological elements in these experiments would be neutralized because you can, like a vaccine, you can neutralize a thing and it still works. Your body still recognizes it. Yeah. So ideally, the biological elements in these experiments would be neutralized and the populations would be informed of what was going on. But this was not always the case. Now, I had intended to do the episode a certain way because I use ChatGPT and the Google ChatGPT thing, which is called Bard, and it used to be called Gemini, or it's called Gemini now, and it used to be called Bard. And I use them to structure the podcast sometimes because I have a load of information and I don't know how to layer it out. So I put it into ChatGPT, and then I delete all the actual facts and put in my own stuff. Right now, when I went to ChatGPT is fantastic, really. When I went to ChatGPT to ask about the US biological weapons program, it gave me some information. It gave me loads of stuff about it. Right. There's also a page on Wikipedia about it, which mentions Operation Sea Spray, among many others. However, when I put the request into Google's did you see this in the script when you saw this bit? When I put the request into Google's AI crowdsourced text compiler Gemini, which used to be called Bard, it said, and this is a quote, "The concept you're looking for doesn't quite exist in the way you've phrased it. Here's why." I know. The US never officially had an offensive biological weapons program. The Biological Weapons Convention outlawed such programs, and the US has actively opposed them. Programs from 1945 to 1950 focused on defense, not offense. They studied potential biological threats to develop vaccines and treatments, which might be misinterpreted as weapons development, right? So that's what Google said.
So the AI is gaslighting it.
Somebody got to it. I don't know, man. I don't know. First, the Biological Weapons Convention was signed in 1975. So there's nothing at all to say about what happened before that. And it says here the programs around 1950 focused on defense, but the Weapons Convention wasn't signed until 1975. So that doesn't make any sense. Second, saying the US never officially had an offensive biological weapons program is true in the same sense that the US never officially declared war on Vietnam. Right? So, I mean, third, man, when I saw this thing in Gemini, I swear, I lost my shit. I was annoyed, and that's why this is why you're going to have to be annoyed with me now. Third, the U.S. legitimately shut down their biological weapons program in 1969 when Nixon, in anticipation of the Biological Weapons Convention, issued his Statement on Chemical and Biological Defense Policies and Programs. Research efforts were directed exclusively to defensive measures such as vaccines and therapies for potential biological weapons threats after that. The entire biological arsenal, which included stocks of pathogens, was destroyed by 1973 under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health, Education and Welfare. Now, there's no reason for us to suspect that that's not true, by the way. Small quantities of some pathogens were kept at Fort Detrick to test the efficacy of preventative measures and therapies, which I also think that's true. It seems odd because why wouldn't it be? It seems odd to make such a big deal out of shutting down a program that never existed, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was big news at the time. We shut down our biological weapons program, right? The one that doesn't exist. Fourth, despite insisting that any biological research was conducted solely for defense, a defensive research program was not established until 1953, which is some years after the biological weapons program was established, as you heard earlier, if you remember that part of the podcast, with the objective of developing countermeasures, vaccines, anti-sera is the plural of anti-serum, I guess, therapeutic agents to protect troops from possible biological attacks, right? Which is all fair enough. So Google wants us to both praise the US for renouncing its biological weapons program and also praise the US for never having one. So I guess Uncle Sam wins this round, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know who got to Google Gemini there, but it's a bit sinister to see it unfold in real time. You should definitely try it yourself. Put your search terms into both of those AI text things. Try it yourself if you want to feel like Bob Woodward in All the President's Men. Do you remember that movie, All the President's Men?
Oh, yeah.
There's a bit where he's like, he's on the phone and he says he calls the Senate library and he says, can you give me a list of all the books that Senator Kennedy took out? And she says, yeah, sure. He's in here all the time. I'll give you a list, right? So she goes away. And when she comes back, she says, oh, I'm sorry. She says something like, Senator Kennedy's never been in here. Not only can I not find his book, but I don't even know who he is or something like that, you know. And Woodward's like immediately over to Bernstein. He's like, come here. Oh my God, he says, I called her. And she said she'd give me the list of books. And she said, in the 10 seconds it took her, he said, to look at this things, someone got to her. It was just, and I think it's the first point in the movie when you realize something serious is happening, you know.
Yeah.
So watch that movie, All the President's Men. Now, normally during these episodes, we would have a top 10 or something to break up the script for mental health reasons, right? Sometimes we need a mental health top 10. This time, however, I realized when I was writing it that the top 10 is in fact the episode. So here we go. Here are the top, and it's not 10, it's just as many as I felt like throwing in. These are the top US biological research projects of questionable ethics, all right? Number 1 off the top is the namer of the episode, Operation Sea Spray. The particular branch of Project 112 concerned with ship-based biological weapons experiments was called SHAD, the Shipboard Hazard.
You say shit-based?
SHAD.
Shit-based.
SHAD. I shid. Yesterday I shad. Yes, of course.
Okay.
The ship stands for Shipboard Hazard and Defense, right? SHAD. Perhaps the most notorious of the biological weapons tested conducted by the US in this area, the SHAD, one of the notorious SHAD operations was called Operation Sea Spray. The San Francisco test involved a US Navy ship that in 1950 sprayed Serratia maracescens while choking around in San Francisco Bay. Now we have a photo of Serratia maracescens, I believe. That is Serratia maracescens, which is red in real life. Now, I don't know if that's artificially colored or not. It might be, but it is red in real life. If you see it on one of those little agar plates, it'll be bright red, right? Starting on September 20, 1950, and continuing until September 27, the US Navy released massive clouds of bacteria from the ship, believing them to be harmless to humans. Based on results from monitoring equipment at 43 locations around the city, it traveled far. Yeah, one estimate said that nearly all of San Francisco received 500 particle minutes per liter. In other words, nearly every one of the 800,000 people in San Francisco exposed to the cloud at normal breathing rate inhaled 5,000 or more particles per minute during the several hours that they remained airborne. And this will tell you how long ago this was. There's only 800,000 people in San Francisco. Then the residents of San Francisco were neither consulted nor notified about these experiments. In October,
what were they actually experimenting on, though?
They wanted to see how far the bacteria would travel if it was released from a ship.
Okay.
So they were looking to pick them up from people, but they didn't want to tell anybody what was going on.
Gotcha.
The idea was if the Russians were offshore and they released the bacteria, what could they expect to see?
So, right, and this was just, they thought this was harmless, and that way they could kind of...
Yeah. Or maybe they wanted to see what would happen if they released stuff offshore in a foreign city. But apparently, the Google AI doesn't like that. In October of that year, a spike in urinary tract infections was so noticeable that Stanford doctors published a paper in the American Medical Association's Archives of Internal Medicine about it. I would imagine most medicine is internal. Someone in the army read the paper and in 1952 commissioned an internal study at Fort Detrick. You remember Fort Detrick from earlier in the episode, to assess the pathogenic potential of Serratia maracescens. They concluded that everything was fine. On the basis of our study, we conclude that Serratia marquescens is so rarely a cause of illness, and the illness resulting is so predominantly trivial that its use as a stimulant should be continued even over populated areas. In 1981, a doctor at Fort Detrick said, "I would still spray SF again today." In the 1977 Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research hearings, and by the way, most of the information in this episode comes from the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research hearings in 1977. So it's like this is basically the Church Committee, but for biological weapons. The Church Committee is the source of a lot of my information on the CIA, and the Health and Scientific Research hearings of 1977 is my source of a lot of information here. In those subcommittee hearings, an alternative view was proposed by an unnamed microbiology professor. An increase in the number of Serratia marquescens can almost certainly cause disease in a healthy person and serious disease in sick people. So like COVID, if you're already vulnerable, it could do some serious damage to you, right? George H. Connell, or as the Americans might say, Connell, the assistant to the director of Centers for Disease Control, what we know as CDC in Atlanta, said at these hearings, 1977 hearings, there is no such thing as a microorganism that cannot cause trouble. If you get the right concentration at the right place at the right time in the right person, something is going to happen. Now that to me makes a lot of sense, although I don't know why he insists on using the word right when clearly he meant wrong. I guess it's the way these guys think. Like when the atomic bomb blew up in the desert and all the scientists are like, "Yay!" you know. So that's Operation Sea Spray. And the second one is called, the second was called Operation Big Itch, right? That's the literal name of it. In 1954, in a U.S. Army testing facility in Utah, which I assume was the Deseret facility, coverage patterns and survivability of the tropical rat flea was assessed for use in biological warfare as a disease vector. And the fleas were loaded onto a series of bombs and dropped over a target area, which was populated with guinea pigs. The tests show that not only could the fleas survive the drop from an airplane, but they also attacked anything warm-blooded nearby. So the tests were a success. And again, Google would have you believe that they were doing it just in case the Russians did it, right? Right. No flea-related humor. They're going to like the next one then. The third one is called Operation Big Buzz. In 1955, the U.S. Army Chemical Corps dropped over 300,000 mosquitoes from aircraft over Savannah, Georgia, to determine the feasibility of producing, storing, and loading into munitions and dispersing yellow fever mosquitoes. That's one of our boys there, the mosquitoes there. Funnily enough, the females are the only ones that bite. The females, the only reason they bite is because they need some sort of special protein to make their eggs. They don't actually need the blood for anything except making eggs. But I guess reproduction is one of those things that's necessary in most animals. So the females are the only ones that bite. And Bill Gates Foundation, one of the things he's trying to do is he's trying to stop malaria.
Of needy bitches.
His foundation is trying to eliminate malaria in Africa, and they're using the fact that it's only females that do it to develop anti-malaria and anti-mosquito.
We need to get Bill Gates out of Africa, okay? Ask how the circumcision thing.
Africa needs rich white people to go in and fix their problems, right?
Yeah, ask them how the circumcision thing went. That's not good. So.
No, okay.
And I'm talking about them, not you. So.
Okay. The next one is Operation Dropkick. In 1956, the U.S. Army Chemical Corps again released mosquitoes again into a residential area of Savannah, Georgia again to evaluate the use of mosquitoes as a biological weapons vector. The residents agreed to participate. Now, this one we know the residents agreed on. So I don't know. It's not so much unethical as I don't know. I guess they were given $100 each or something. I don't know.
Really?
The fifth one.
You like to get bit a lot? Do you like to get bit a lot? Do you like mosquitoes?
Maybe Savannah, Georgia in the summertime is kind of mosquito country anyway. They just didn't see I don't know. Well, from what I gather, we'll see.
Operation I get bit a lot anyways. Might as well make some money while I'm doing it. Yeah.
Operation Mayday, which is the fifth one. This is another 1956 mass drop of mosquitoes over Savannah, Georgia, whose residents must surely by now be sick to the back teeth of bloody mosquitoes all over the place. This time they were released from the ground and instead of the air and captured with dry ice traps. There is evidence that there was a lot of residents complaining about the unusually high number of mosquitoes in Savannah, Georgia that year, 1956. So I guess that's what they were doing. This is Operation Magic Sword, which sounds great, doesn't it?
Magic Sword.
Yeah.
Sounds like a porno.
It does. It's well, I was going to go with something else, but okay. In 1965, a similar experiment with. Would you like to see my magic sword? Certainly. Here's a mosquito. A similar experiment with mosquitoes was conducted. This time to evaluate mosquito vectors for biological weapons at sea. Now, I feel at this point I should remind everyone this is not about the mosquitoes. It's about the germs and diseases you can load into the mosquitoes and then drop on Iran or whatever, right? Or as Google would say, not about that. Next is the Avon Park experiments. Avon comes from a very old Celtic word, which means river park. Avon Park experiments.
I thought that was like the cosmetic people that sell shit.
I assume the cosmetics people are, if you go back far enough, I'm guarantee it comes from the Celtic word for river. Stratford on Avon. Stratford's on a river, right?
Maybe? Maybe they're travelers?
Maybe they just, like, somebody's name can be river.
Maybe.
So maybe it's just the name of somebody who's named after a river somewhere. And then they passed it down a few generations and now, boom, cosmetics.
Odd.
Yeah.
Weird.
Also in 1956, the Corps, they're the Corps to me now, the chemical, U.S. Army Chemical Corps. The Corps released 600,000 uninfected mosquitoes from a plane at Avon Park bombing range in Florida. The report said, within a day, the mosquitoes had spread a distance of between 1 and 2 miles and had bitten many people. In 1958, 2 years later, further tests at Avon Park with 1 million mosquitoes showed that they could easily be disseminated from helicopters, would spread more than a mile in any direction, and would enter all types of buildings. The report noted, now this...
Because they're bugs. They're mosquitoes.
Bugs, but this is going to fuck Russia, or not Russia, it's going to fuck Google in the ass. You ready for this? Or maybe Russia too. This is the report from the Avon Park experiments. Yellow fever is a highly dangerous disease. A person begins to show symptoms of the fever from 2 to 10 days after he's been bitten. Now, it also noted that 1/3 of yellow fever patients die. And it went on to say that yellow fever has never occurred in some areas, including Asia, and therefore it is quite probable that the population of the USSR would be susceptible to the disease.
Ooh.
Now, why would they say that if they were working on a purely defensive biological weapons program?
Yeah.
Why would it matter if the Russians were susceptible to it or not? You would only say that if you were considering sending those things over to Russia as an offensive thing.
Right.
This was in 1958. 1953 is when the defensive program kicked off. So obviously the offensive program was working in parallel with it. And it also calls into question everything else they've told us, right?
Yeah.
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 By 1960, the army had the ability to produce 500,000 mosquitoes per month. And they had plans for a facility to churn out 130 million mosquitoes per month.
Jesus Christ.
I couldn't get any information on whether or not they set up that facility, but they definitely had plans to do it.
That's some serious breeding numbers. I mean,
it must be weird. I mean,
like rabbits and squirrels got nothing on these, fucking mosquitoes.
Imagine going home after the mosquito factory,
Yeah.
Hard days working at the mosquito factory. Now, this is one, again, I could do an entire episode about sea spray. I could do an entire episode on Avon Park, but I didn't. I'm shoving them all in here. I could definitely do an entire episode on Tuskegee.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the Tuskegee experiment. In 1932, the CDC, along with Tuskegee University, enrolled 400 African-American men with syphilis. They didn't give them syphilis, but they enrolled 400 African-American men with syphilis into a research program where their condition was left untreated just to see what happens, right? They were promised free healthcare in return, which I'm led to believe that this is a strong incentive for Americans. The men were not...
Still fucking is.
Yeah. So. In Ireland, if he said, I'll give you free healthcare, it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, okay? The men were not informed that they had syphilis or that the program was refraining from treating them. They were not told any of these things. And they were all black. And it's hard not to see that as a racism issue,
Besides, syphilis has been well documented by then.
Yes, it had.
So what was the fucking point then? Well, we already know what happens to you if you don't.
Yeah, nothing good, right? But even then, I wouldn't mind that so much if they had told them what was going on and blah blah blah, right? Anyway, the men enrolled in the program for 6 months in 1932, but it kept rolling for decades. A cheap, easy treatment for syphilis was developed in 1947, which we call penicillin. Yeah. But the government refused to treat them or even inform them that an effective treatment was available. Now that's vile.
Yes.
Yeah. A press leak.
Did they at least give them powdered wigs?
A press leak, and just journalism. Journalism is what stopped this. A press leak in 1972 led to the shutdown of the program.
What's journalism?
Journalism is when you hold power accountable, when you speak truth to power.
Not familiar. Anyways, go on.
What would you call journalism?
I'm just being so go ahead. I'm just saying it's a nearly foreign concept at this point.
Yeah. It's there is journalism still happening.
It is. It's just very rare. Actually, I mean, it's more on social media, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but it's true. So, anyways,
there's
David,
there's
David Sirota, The Lever, Ryan Grimm, Jeremy Scahill, who did the David Hale stuff.
Yes,
tons of good journalists.
Yeah.
Anyways,
remember the journalists have been going into the UCLA Gaza encampment, and none of the kids want to talk to them. Yeah, because those kids are smart. Because they know
they learned from Occupy. They learned how.
The Zionists will just twist everything they say. Yeah. So they said, we have a media guy, you should talk to him. And now they're writing stories about how none of the students will talk to me, and they're being they're all
facetious about it.
Oh, yeah, stupid. Anyway. A press leak in 1972 led to the shutdown of the program, the Tuskegee experiment, by which time 28 patients had died from syphilis, 100 died from complications of syphilis, 40 of the patients' wives were infected with syphilis, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis, which has to be the most depressing form of syphilis imaginable, congenital syphilis.
They at least give the kids fucking penicillin? I mean, what the fuck?
Well, we want to see what happens, Seamus.
Yeah.
Okay, why would we cure them? For God's sake, we're giving them all free healthcare.
Yeah, they need free healthcare, but you're denying them the healthcare.
Yeah. So that's a dark stain on the history of American everything, right?
Yeah.
That's time for another dark stain. There's a joke
transition.
There. Yeah. Not going to make it. This is called from the 1950s to the 1970s. Mentally disabled children. This is going to be a good one, right? Mentally disabled children at Willowbrook State School in New York were deliberately infected with hepatitis to study the disease. The medical researchers Saul Krugman of New York University and Robert McCullum of Yale University reasoned that. Just in case you're wondering, that was an edit, and I'm not allowed to say what I just said. Okay, so I'm not going to do it. But the hepatitis rates were so high in this school. The chances were good that the children were going to contract the disease anyway, and at least this way the progress of the disease could be monitored. According to vaccinologist Morris Hilleman, they were the most unethical medical experiments ever performed on children in the United States, which is already kind of so kind of specific that it's sad that you'd have to be that specific about the most unethical medical experiments ever performed on children in the United States. When you start adding things, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Now, that's Willowbrook. And again, I could do a whole episode about that. Don't want to now.
No.
Because of the bit we've edited out. Not going to touch that again. Anyway, the next one is called Operation Whitecoat. These are all real operation names. I didn't make up any of these. Operation Whitecoat was the use of human subjects in biological weapons experiments. They were volunteers and they understood exactly what was happening to them, unlike Tuskegee, right? They knew what was going on. They were all conscientious objectors and pacifist Seventh-day Adventists who made a deal with the army.
Interesting.
More than 2,000 of these whitecoats, so called because they also worked as lab techs on site, were infected with what were believed to be non-lethal pathogens to test different treatments and vaccines. In 1994, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs conducted what it described as a comprehensive analysis, stretching back 50 years of the extent to which veterans were exposed to potentially dangerous substances without knowledge or consent. It concluded that the Department of Defense repeatedly failed to comply with required ethical standards when using human subjects in military research and demonstrated a pattern of misrepresenting the danger of various exposures.
Jesus Christ.
So that's interesting, right? Number 11, see, we're not doing top 10 anymore. Number 11, which I've called the Washington tests. In a May 1965 secret release of bacteria at Washington's National Airport and its Greyhound Line bus terminal, more than 130 passengers were exposed to the bacteria and traveled to 39 cities in 7 states in the week afterwards. It's like that bit in the zombie movie where they have a map and you just see it traveling across, or the kind of red cloud. Washington was one of 5 cities where the Army released simulated lethal germs in public places. Other cities where the public served as unknowing guinea pigs were New York, San Francisco, Key West, and Panama City, Florida. Panama City, fair enough, I get it. But the rest of the places, right? The live bacteria... Sorry, hang on.
That's what the Van Halen song is about. Is that what you're saying?
Panama City. Okay. The live bacteria the Army employed were deemed harmless at the time, but Senator Richard S. Shaviker told the Senate subcommittee hearing, the one I spoke about before, that it is very risky indeed to assume that any living organism reduced to germ warfare size and released in a populated area is ever safe, which is a very good point. Now, this next bit is called Subway Experiment, number 12. In 1966, light bulbs full of a bacteria, this is the purple one.
Oh, the purple one.
Yes. Do you have the name of it there in front of you?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's Bacillus globuli or something like that, right? Because I don't have it here, but I tweeted all the names.
I like
But
the
that's
purple
the
one
one.
better.
Light bulbs full of that bacteria were dropped into the New York subway. The idea was to map the spread in the case of an attack, right? So they tell us, unless they were mapping the spread in case of one of their attacks. The experiment was secret to simulate real-life conditions, meaning no one was informed of the risks involved or consented to be part of the experiment. It was believed that the bacteria was harmless, but later it was shown to cause health problems in vulnerable people, again like COVID. Like if all your test subjects for COVID were young, healthy people, you could say that COVID has no symptoms. You could get a group of 10 young people who wouldn't even know that they had it if they were strong and healthy. And COVID will kill you if you're 90 and you have a cough. So, all right. Next one is called Project Jefferson. At the end of the 1990s, secret research was conducted by the secret U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, we've talked about them before, to produce a strain of anthrax, specifically to get around publicly available vaccines. Now, this Project Jefferson, the aim of it was to try and create a strain of anthrax that the public available vaccines did not work on. Like that was their intention, right? Their stated intention. Now, I'm sure this is not related to the U.S. Department of Defense program called Project Bacchus in 2000, which was a project to determine if anyone could produce anthrax using publicly available materials. International legal experts claimed it was a violation of the Biological Weapons Convention that we discussed earlier that Richard Nixon was talking about. But Pentagon lawyers said it was fine, and and Pentagon lawyers are honorable men, as are they all honorable men.
Of course.
Right? Yes, as are they all. Brutus was an honorable man, as are they all honorable men. Now, today, the Pentagon is continuing to withhold documents on Cold War biological weapons tests that used unsuspecting members of the various arms of the U.S. military as human samplers after telling Congress it released all medically relevant information. The Defense Department acknowledged in 2003 that it still has documents on the scope and methods of the tests. And the Pentagon... Yeah, I know, right?
that's such a fucking weird humble brag, right? Yep, we still got the documents, bitches. You can't get them.
Well, you're the Senate committee set up to look into them. We're not allowed to give them to you. You'll never guess what this one says. Oh, you'd love to see it. Oh, can you read it? Can you read it? Go on, try and read it now. The Pentagon claims... The Pentagon claims that detailed planning documents and reports for each of the tests are classified because they identify vulnerabilities of various military systems and equipment to chemical and biological warfare agents and capabilities for delivering those agents, right? Which I guess, I mean, it might be valid. Think about it. It might actually be a valid national security risk. I wouldn't know because I haven't seen the documents.
Yeah, really.
Or it could just be bullshit, and they don't want things to look worse than they already are. Because in the documents there might be some stuff.
I tend to lean on the side of bullshit, because
yes, but we don't know. We don't know. Eventually, they'll have to come out anyway, because there's no way they can say that it's going to be a national security risk forever. Because eventually, all the systems they have will be replaced, and all the equipment will be replaced.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's still a lot of documents that they won't release. They did, different operations in the 60s because of national security.
Well, it's a bit...
JFK is one.
It is problematic when the people who determine whether or not it's a national security risk are also the people who will be exposed if it's not a national security risk. And I don't know a way out of that. Like, should there be some sort of civilian oversight? I mean, how would you...
Exactly. I mean, it's like, whenever the cops investigate themselves.
Yes, but there is a civilian oversight with the police investigations. Like, you could do that.
Not always.
No, but it's available as an option, I mean. It doesn't seem to be available as an option in the Pentagon.
Yep. Can't do it.
You know what they do? They could have like a grand jury hearing, maybe something like that. They could make it a federal thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's not for this podcast. Right. That is the end of my presentation on the U.S. Biological Weapons Program, or as we call it, the non-existent, as Google calls it, the non-existent U.S. Biological Weapons Program. There's also a chemical weapons program I didn't talk about at all. I might do another episode on that, but it looks kind of like what you just heard there.
Fantastic.
And now I want to know what's going on right now. What's new? Okay, just before every podcast, just before we record, myself and Seamus put FBI and CIA into Google, and we hit the news tab, and we pick some links for stories currently that we think are interesting or stupid or funny. And the idea is to say that although we're talking about things that happened in the past, the FBI and the CIA are still stupid and funny. Seamus, give me your FBI links.
Okay, so warrantless FBI searches of American communications drop 50%.
Did you say warrantless?
Yep.
Drop 50%. That means there are still many.
Oh, yeah. The FISO section, was it 702 Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of last year that they're claiming dropped 52% from 2022. This is also what they just renewed recently.
There should be zero.
Thank you. I always have an issue whenever they brag about these numbers because, again, we just did a whole episode about shit that they've lied to us about.
Yeah.
So whatever.
I only murdered 2 people last year. That's down.
Yeah.
From 4 I murdered in 2020.
So the other fun thing is they just re-upped this, right? Yeah. And I'm sure this is probably one of those things that they're like pointing to, saying, "Look, it's not that bad a deal. Look." Numbers are actually down. See, you guys need to calm down. Oh, by the way, we made sure there's a provision that us, the people in Congress and the Senate and so forth, they can't spy on us. Anyways, we assigned this.
Do you have the absolute numbers of how many arrests there were without warrants?
No, I don't. This isn't arrest. This is, just checking on your communications and such.
Oh, taps.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
That's all good. So the other thing that's been going around, first it was the GOP that started this, but of course now you even have Nancy Pelosi pushing Director Wray of the FBI to start doing investigations about the on-campus protest against Israel. Yep. So there's a lot of that.
You just investigate genocide. How about that?
How about that? That'd be weird.
Oh, right? Nancy.
Yeah. So there's an opinion piece that was put out by the Washington Post. The FBI director is concerned over terrorism or at a whole other level. Now, normally I'd say ignore opinion pieces, especially by the Washington Post. Democracy dies in the dark. Bullshit.
So I have that text on every page. Yeah.
Right. But there are some interesting quotes.
Oh, here we go.
In there. Several times they refer to ISIS-K, which is an Islamic State offshoot in Khorasan.
In where?
Khorasan? Am I pronouncing that? Khorasan. It's a northern region of Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
So they're trying to say, you from the creators of ISIS. Now there's Ultra ISIS, ISIS-K.
I'm not familiar with Khorasan or ISIS-K.
Yeah. So this is the new boogeyman, and
I've heard it can help control your weight, though, as part of a calorie-controlled diet.
Yeah. So the Gaza war adds a final combustible element. Ray concerns about the unknown of unknowns is a good description of the perilous terrain ahead. So basically, they're saying that this whole Gaza conflict is causing issues and might mask some sort of attempts of turning lone wolves and such, the Oswalds of the world, to do bad things to us Americans. So we need to be the guys, to watch out for these people that are suddenly on the side of pro-Gaza.
Yeah. I saw a thing online. It said, there's a picture of the Eiffel Tower, and it says, Paris will be next. You have to stop Iran now. Like, Iran's not bombing Paris, man. You're fine, So,
and not to be on the side of Iran, but they bombed one of their embassies. They Israel did.
Yeah.
They
It was
broke the Geneva Convention. They
It was
broke
a
the Geneva
performative
Convention
return
by
action.
doing
Yeah.
it. They committed a war crime against Iran. So I don't know.
Once
Anyways,
again, Iran are not the good guys, but I understand. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yep. So that's my what's new.
All right. My what's news are, let's see, on Associated Press. Lawmakers criticize CIA's handling of sexual misconduct, but offer few specifics, probably national interest issues. A congressional committee Monday criticized the CIA's handling of sexual misconduct allegations in its ranks, saying victims have been deterred from coming forward and were aware of little to no accountability or punishment for the perpetrators of the assault. That's one thing that's happening.
Oh, no biggie.
Another one is lessons to psychiatrists in training from the CIA mind control projects.
Oh.
This is another opinion piece, but it's very interesting to read it. If you want, it's on statnews.com. That's with the CIA's mind control projects, MK Ultra mainly. We will be doing an episode or maybe a series of episodes about MK Ultra. Until then, you have this piece on Stat News. Do you have the little?
Yep.
Go.
Where the hell is William Burns? William Burns, William Burns. Where the hell is William Burns? William Burns this week.
He's in Egypt.
Where the hell is William Burns? William Burns, William Burns. Where the hell is William Burns? William Burns this week.
It works. It works perfectly. Oh, I love it. Brilliant. Yeah, he's in Egypt. And my last link is judge in September 11th case visits former CIA black site.
Okay.
Colonel Matthew McCall toured the part of the prison at Guantanamo Bay where, in 2007, federal agents obtained now disputed confessions from terrorism suspects. Remember,
really?
An internal CIA study on the benefits of torture themselves, and I quote, did not produce any actionable intelligence, right?
Weird.
So that is my links, and I guess, therefore, that is our show, unless you want to talk about something else.
Nope, that's it, folks. Again, we will do more Bill Maher. Maybe we'll actually attack some other people as well.
Yeah. Tell us what you want us to do. And apparently we're in give the people what they want mode. So tell us what you want us to do. We will sell our souls. If that's what it takes to get 1,000 likes, man, I don't give a damn. Do it. Tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah. Follow us on the social medias. Reach out to us.
You're missing some amazing shit on my Twitter, man. If you're not following me, you're missing some amazing stuff on my Twitter. Not from me. Stuff I'm reblogging. Sorry, just to be clear.
You're reblogging. So.
My stuff is just gibberish. Pointless gibberish. But
it's fun gibberish. It's fun gibberish.
I try to be fun, yeah. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Do we have any hint of what's happening in 2 weeks? Bill Maher, obviously. Nothing more Bill Maher in 2 weeks.
Probably, yeah. We'll probably do one of those. And then an FBI something for me. So
yeah.
Till then, bye, guys.